Hello everyone, welcome back. Long time no see. It's been a couple weeks. If you didn't know, we just moved from Arizona to Utah in a matter of a couple weeks, so thus the little period of no videos. But today I have a mega fall video with 48 fall DIYs. This is basically all the fall DIYs I have done on my channel, all into one condensed video so that you guys can watch it and have, you know, just one video to go to. And without further ado, let's go ahead and jump on into these 48 fall DIYs. I am gonna take one of these wooden trucks that you can get from the Dollar Tree. They do have two pieces connected to each other, so it's like, you know, one of truck with the front and the back. That makes sense. But I liked this because I wanted to have the ability to put things inside the truck. So I think that this is really fun for this kind of DIY, or if you wanted, you know, to have two trucks, you could just split them apart and have two separate trucks. But I'm just going to go ahead and start painting my truck. I'm just going to use this mustardy color that I'm absolutely loving for fall. It's from Apple Barrel and it's just one of my favorite colors for fall. So I'm going to paint the front on the front and the front on the back so that when you're looking at it, you can see it's all finished. You don't see any unfinished wood. I'm going to use my antique wax for the bed portion of the truck and then some black paint for the wheels. Now for the inside, because it doesn't have anywhere for me to put anything on inside the truck, I needed a little piece for the bed where I could insert flowers and all sorts of stuff. So I'm just gonna take a long paint stir stick and I just measured it down and cut it out so that I could hot glue it to the inside of the truck so that I can put flowers and all sorts of stuff on there without them falling through. And then I'm just going to grab some florals that I picked up from Michael's and I'm just going to start, you know, kind of putting everything together. I did hot glue a little piece of floral foam in there just so that it kind of had something a little extra to kind of stick to so that it was easier for me to put everything together. I put those florals in there. I just cut off a couple off of that pick. And then I'm also going to take some of these foam pumpkins. They're actually from Hobby Lobby. They come in a pack full of pine cones and these cute little pumpkins. I just put some skewer sticks on them and poked them down into the floral foam. And then to make it look a little bit more full, I'm going to take some raffia and wrap it around my hand a couple times and glue it all together at the bottom and then cut those loops at the top and then just hot glue those down into the truck. So, you know, you got that raffia grass in there, making it look a little bit more full inside, but I think this added a really cute touch to it. After I did that, that was it. I'm just loving the way that this turned out and I just think it looks adorable. One, I'm going to take these 2 yard stake signs from the Dollar Tree. I'm going to remove both of the larger pieces on both signs, so you're going to be left with 4 of those individual signs. And then I'm going to start by making them into arrows. So I just cut, you know, a little triangle at the top using just a utility knife and a ruler. And that's about it. I just cut one, and then once I had that one cut, I just used it as a template for all the other ones, and I just cut all of those out. It was really easy to cut through. I just scored it a couple times, and then I was able to break the majority of it off, and then just kind of clean it up with the utility knife as well. And then I'm going to go through with my Dixie Belle Paint and Fluff and just give it one good coat. This doesn't have to be perfect by any means. I wanted it to look pretty rustic and distressed. So I just gave everything one good coat. And then I also went in with their grunge glaze, with Dixie Belle's grunge glaze, if I can say that. And I just kind of dry brushed over it really, and I love the effect that it gave to it. I thought that it was really cool. It did give it kind of that distressed and grungy look, which I thought, you know, was really fun. And then I cut out some words with my CRICUT. If you don't have a CRICUT, you can totally do this just with stickers, because that's all I'm going to be using these for, is just as a sticker and then, you know, kind of as a stencil. So you would just take your own stickers and put them on your signs. So I just take my vinyl and I'm just weeding all that out, and then I'm going to place it on all of my signs, trying to get it in the middle as best as I can. And then after I've removed that transfer tape, I'm going to take my paint and I'm just going to paint right over it. So I use 4 different colors from Dixie Belle. I'll have all the names in my description box below so you can find them. I just thought they were all so pretty, and I love the colors for fall. So I'm just going to go through and paint over the entire sign. You're going to paint over your stickers or your vinyl letters, and then before the paint dries, you're going to remove your stickers. So I just use my little weeding tool to get all of those removed. And you're going to do this for all 4 of your signs. So I have pumpkin patch and apple cider and hayrides and corn maze written on all the arrows, and you're just going to make yourself a cute little directional sign. I thought this one was so much fun. So whatever stickers you have, you can go to Hobby Lobby and get stickers there. Any of them are going to work. You just want some words written on your sign. So after I have all 4 of my pieces finished, I'm going to take the yardstake that these were originally attached to, and I'm just going to attach my pieces to that, and then I just kind of tilted them opposite directions from each one, and that's all you have to do for the yardstake portion of this project. I think this is super cute. And then to help it stand up, I purchased this galvanized bucket from Walmart. I thought this was really fun, and I wanted something on the front of it, so I took my COUTURE transfer that had a little pumpkin and some vines on it, and I just used my white chalk paste and put that right on there. Now when I did pull it up, it kind of took some of that black like fake chalkboard portion of it off. I don't know if that just wasn't on there very well, but I just ended up taking some black paint and touching that up a little bit. And then I just put it in the bucket with some floral foam and some trash bags to keep it all together, and then some Spanish moss on the top to cover it all up. And that's it for this one. I'm going to take one of these cube drawers that you can get from the Dollar Tree, as well as one of these stake signs from the Dollar Tree. I'm going to take my Dixie Belle paint in Vintage Duck Egg. You guys, I have been obsessed with this color for fall. If you haven't noticed in all of my recent videos, I am using this color. It's absolutely one of my favorites. I will always have Dixie Belle linked in my description box if you're interested. I am just obsessed with this color, so I use this on both pieces, on my stake sign and on my drawer. And I just used the outside portion of the drawer. I took out the middle and set that to side for a future project if I need to use it, but I'm just going to be using the outside portion for this DIY. Once my paint is all dry, I'm just going to add some hot glue to the bottom of my stake and put it to the back of my box. And I found this scrapbook paper from Michael's in a big paper pack, and I love how this scrapbook paper has little details on it like this tag. I thought this was so cute, so I decided to cut it out, and I'm going to use this on the stake sign. So first, I am going to make a bow using some twine. I'm just wrapping it around my pointer finger and my thumb, and I just wrap it around however many times that I want. Really just depends on how thick you want your bow to be. I'm going to take another piece and tie it around the middle, and then I'll just trim the tails to however long I want those to be. And I just started hot gluing my bow down to the middle of that sign, and then I slid the tag right underneath. I just thought that was absolutely adorable on there. And then I'm going to fill the inside with all sorts of florals. So I'm just going to start by hot gluing some foam down. I took some pics from Hobby Lobby. I took some little foam pumpkins from Hobby Lobby that came in a filler piece. Just all sorts of different kind of stuff. Some sunflowers from Joann's. And I just started putting these down inside my box, just arranging them really, again, however you want it to look. I always play with my arrangements a ton before I get it the way that I want it to look. I'm going to take some raffia, wrap that around my hand several times, cut off the loops at the top so that I can use that in my floral arrangement, use it as some filler. I'll put some styrofoam pumpkins on some skewer sticks, add those to my arrangement, and that's it for this one. I think this turned out super, super cute. For this DIY, I grabbed this wreath from Walmart, and then I also grabbed some florals from Walmart. I want to say that they were about $6, and I just started by cutting all of the pieces apart. So all the little florals and all the stems, I just cut them with my wire cutters, and then I just began sticking them all in the wreath. I love these kinds of wreaths because you don't have to use a ton of hot glue. I just stick them right on in there and they stay really well. So I just kind of played around with the placement of all the florals and tried figuring out, you know, what would look best. And I only did the bottom half of this wreath. I just love seeing the top portion of the wreath bare because I feel like it just looks really fall, and it just, you know, it just reminds me of fall. So I just kept sticking everything in there, and then I also grabbed a couple picks that I had purchased from Hobby Lobby and cut that apart, and then I also stuck those in there as well. Just all the different kind of textures and colors. I just thought it was all so beautiful. And then on those two picks from Hobby Lobby, there were also a pumpkin on each one. So I did cut those off as well and then just stuck them right down at the bottom. I did have to use a little bit of hot glue for those, but I just put it on the stem and then stuck it right down into the wreath. And then to finish it off, I just made a bow with this gray and kind of a creamy white buffalo check ribbon that I picked up from Michael's. Just did a simple shoelace bow with it, hot glued it down to the side, and that's it for this one. For this DIY, I'm going to grab one of these stretch canvas that I got in a pack, I believe from Michael's, and they are a 12 by 12 frame. I'm going to take one of these calendars that I got at the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to use the pumpkin picture out of it. So the first thing I'm going to do is just remove the canvas off of the frame, just using a utility knife. And I'm going to go through and cut along the back of it so that I can remove the canvas from the frame. And then you can go through and take out the staples if you want to. Really, totally up to you on personal preference. I'm going to be covering it up later, so it's not too big of a deal if those staples don't come out. And then I'm going to take some of this Craft Smart Barnwood stain in gray. And unfortunately, this isn't available any longer, but this was one of my favorite water-based stains for a really long time. So I'm just going to start by staining the front and the sides of the frame in the middle. And then again, I'm going to take that pumpkin picture from this 2021 calendar from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to use this as my backing. So I am going to take the cardboard piece that was inside the calendar and I'm going to hot glue that picture to it so that it adds more stability. And then I'm going to hot glue that down to the frame. And then to give the back a little bit more of a finished look and make it just nice and clean looking, I'm going to take that canvas that we removed in the beginning and I'm going to hot glue that to the back to cover everything up. And then to add just a little bit more extra detail, I'm going to take some buffalo check ribbon and I'm going to tie it in just a simple shoelace bow, and I'm going to hot glue that down. And then I'm going to take some of this yellow yarn that I have as well and tie a bow with that and just kind of layer the bows on top of each other, hot glue them down to the stem on the pumpkin, and that's it for this DIY. You have a really cute pumpkin sign, and I love the pop of yellow from the yarn. DIY, I grabbed a square sign from the Dollar Tree. I'm going to mix a couple of my Dixie Belle paints together, and then I'm going to give the entire thing a good coat and a half of paint. Again, I did not paint the inside of the back because it is going to be covered up with some cardstock, so I wasn't too worried about that one. And then I'm going to take some faux leather that I got from CRICUT. This stuff is super, super pretty, and I'm loving the way that this project turned out because of the leather. I just love the texture that it gives. So I'm going to put this down on my mat face down on a standard grip. I just used the maple leaf that I had from the previous project. I just sized it to how big I wanted it and then cut it out. Now I'm going to take some more cardstock from a pack that I got from Michael's. I'm going to cut that down to size using the back of the sign as a guide, and then I just kind of trimmed it down as needed till it fit inside. And then I'm just going to use a glue stick, put that right inside, and then also use a glue stick to attach the leather leaf to the middle of my sign. You could obviously use a different adhesive that would probably work a lot better, something, you know, some sort of fabric adhesive. I didn't have anything like that on hand, so I just used my glue stick, and this is working perfect so far. So I'm just gonna put that right in the middle of my sign, and then I felt like it was still missing something, so I took some twine and some beads, and I just put the beads on the twine until I got the amount that I liked. I ended up tying several double knots to each end, and then I just hot glued this to the top of my sign as like a little handle, and I thought that this turned out super, super cute. Let me know what you think of it in the comments. DIY. This is super, super easy. I love being able to take candle holders and make them into something different, especially for a very affordable price. So I saw these candle holders and I thought these were so cute. They had just these fall words written on them, and I wanted to be able to do the lid for this project, but I couldn't find one or anything that fit the size of the glass candle holder that I'm going to be using. So if you could find something to fit your candle holder and do this lid like this, I think that would be really cute too. So I am just going to do the Hey Pumpkin on my design space, just cut those words out with some gold adhesive vinyl. And I found this orange candle holder at the Dollar Tree. I liked that it had half of it in that frosty orange. I thought that was really pretty. So all you have to do is weed out your words, attach your transfer tape to it, and put it on top of your candle. And that's all you got to do. Really, really easy and simple, and a fun way to just dress up something that's a little bit more plain and turn it into some fall decor. You could add a real candle to it, like I will show you. The candle was a little bit too big, or you could add in just one of Dollar Tree's LED candles, the little tea light ones, and I think either way it looks really fun, and it just adds that perfect pop of gold and orange to your fall decor. Why I took one of these pumpkin wreath forms. I actually picked this one up at Hobby Lobby. I know that you can get them at the Dollar Tree. At least last year they had them out, but I'm assuming if they had them last year, they'll have them this year. So whether you get them from the Dollar Tree or Hobby Lobby, pick one of these up and then pick out your favorite yarn. I just grabbed this chunkier yarn that I got, I think from Joann's, and all I'm going to do is tie a knot right at the base of the stem of the pumpkin, and now I'm going to wrap that yarn just around and around and around until I get all the way around the pumpkin. I'm not going to do the middle yet, I'm just going to do the outside. Now, one thing that did help me was to cut off a chunk of the yarn rather than trying to fit, you know, the whole skein of yarn through those wires. So just cut off a little bit and just wrap it around, and then when you get done with that, you can hot glue it and then start the next section. And now what I'm going to do for the middle section, it's kind of hard to explain, so hopefully you can understand what I'm doing. I'm just going to start off by hot gluing at the bottom of the pumpkin on one side. So where that first wire goes down through the middle, I'm just going to hot glue it around that. And then I'm going to wrap my yarn around the bottom, over the top, and back to the bottom. And then I'm going to bring my yarn around the bottom of the next wire, over the top, and back around the bottom. And I'm just going to do that over and over and over again. So I'll bring it around to the next wire, around the bottom, over the top, and then back around to the bottom. And I just tried to hold my yarn as tight as I could because I wanted everything to be nice and taut, make sure that everything was nice and tight. And then when I got to the end, when you're going to overlap to the side of the pumpkin, I did the same thing on that last wire throughout the middle. I went around underneath to the bottom and then wrapped around the top, brought my yarn back around, and then I would go over the side. So over the top of the side, bring that down, and then I would just wrap it around the next wire again and then start my pattern over. So wrap it underneath, over the top, back down, and then just do this all the way till you get to the very top of the pumpkin. So this is a bit of a, you know, this is a movie kind of craft, if you will. This did take me a good couple hours to do, but this is the perfect kind of craft to do when you have a good movie you want to watch, or if you got a good audiobook that you want to listen to, something to keep you preoccupied. I know I love doing my fast crafts, but honestly, it's kind of relaxing having a craft that you don't have to put too much thought into. You don't have to, you know, think a whole lot. You can kind of just mindlessly do it and watch a show. It's very relaxing, pretty therapeutic. So I just kept doing this over and over and over until I got to the very top. Now, when I got to the top, when I'm wrapping it around those end pieces, they didn't want to stay. So I had to take some hot glue to get those side pieces to stay when I was wrapping it around. And it just was looking a little bit sparse and I couldn't get it exactly the way that I wanted it to. So I decided to just finish it off. You can see how there are some gaps at the top. So what I ended up doing was just taking some hot glue and yarn and kind of just filling those pieces in by hot gluing them to the back. And then I'm also going to be adding a bow to this, so it really wasn't a big deal if it wasn't super full. So I just went through and kind of filled in with extra yarn where I thought that I needed to. And then I'm going to take some of this ribbon that I got from Michael's, I believe, and I just thought this was really cute. So I'm just going to take it in 2 loops and I'm just going to tie it in a knot. And since the front and back are the same, this works perfectly. So I don't have to worry about twisting my ribbon in any sort of way to get the front to show. So I just mess with the loops until I get it the size that I want and cut that off. And then I'm also going to take some raffia and kind of start folding it in on each other on one end and then on the other, kind of like you would do a cord or a vacuum cord maybe. And then I'm going to take an extra piece of raffia and I'm just going to tie that around the middle. So I have this cute little raffia bow, and I'm going to hot glue this down first. And I'm just going to hot glue that right at the base of the pumpkin stem. And then I'm going to take my bow and I'm going to hot glue that down right on top of the raffia. And then I'm just going to hot glue my tails down to the pumpkin where I want them to be. I want them to be kind of fluffed up in certain places. So I'm just going to hot glue them down where I see fit, where I think it'll look pretty. And then I ended up taking some of this wired berries that I have and I just wrapped it around my finger to make it into a coil. And then I just hot glued that right down underneath the bow, and I just did that 2 times, 1 on each side, and that's it. I think this is so stinking cute. This piece right here is what kind of inspired the sweater weather DIYs. I just thought this one was absolutely adorable, so I decided to go on with the theme. So here is how my first DIY turned out. One, you are gonna need 4 of these signs that you can get from the Dollar Tree. They have them up for multiple different seasons, so whatever kind of season you have, it doesn't really matter. Just pick 4 of them and use those. So I'm going to take these and make a little planter out of it. So I'm going to have 2 on the bottom and 2 on top. Now these aren't all the exact same size, which gave me some issues, but it wasn't too big of a deal. So I'm just going to start hot gluing these together, 2 side by side, and then I'll hot glue them top and bottom. I wanted to cover up the sides, so I took some of this scrapbook paper that I got from Hobby Lobby and I just kind of traced that out so that I could wrap it around the planter as best as I could. I used some Mod Podge to stick that down to my little planter, as well as some hot glue to get that all nice and secure. And then I did take some sandpaper and go around the edges just to get all the excess paper off that I didn't want. And then to blend the seams in a little bit from where I had the paper glued down, I'm just going to take my mineral chalk paint from Waverly and I'm just going to dry brush around the entire planter. Like I said, I just wanted everything to look seamless, so I used that to do a little dry brushing. Now I'm going to take some of these pumpkins that I picked up from Dollar Tree last year. I'm hoping that they'll have them again this year. And I'm going to take 4 of them. I'm going to paint them with my Waverly chalk paint and moss. I just gave them all a good 2 coats. And then with my Waverly chalk paint and white and a paintbrush, I'm just going to kind of do a splatter paint with this on my pumpkins. I wanted them to have that kind of speckly look to them. My Waverly chalk paint wasn't working too well because I feel like it's a little too thick, so I grabbed some acrylic paint and that worked a lot better to get that splatter look that I was going for. Next, I'm going to hot glue some floral foam into the top portion of my planter on both sides. And then I'm going to take a whole assortment of all sorts of different kind of florals. Florals from Joann's and Dollar Tree and even Walmart. And I just started cutting pieces off of picks and putting them inside my planter. I just played around with it until I thought that it looked good. I always tend to switch things up a lot when I'm doing pieces like this. But just play around with the arrangement until you get it the way that you like it. And then I added the wire back to those pumpkins and inserted that into my floral arrangement as well. Now I'm going to take some twine and wrap that around my planter a couple of times. I'm going to tie it in a knot on the side, and then I am going to make a twine bow just by wrapping it around my pointer finger and my thumb several times. And then I'll take another piece of twine and wrap it around the middle, tie a double knot, and then I'm just going to hot glue this to the side of my planter, and that's it for this DIY. I think this floral arrangement is so pretty. I had this up for an entire year in my craft area in my room. I just barely took it down when I was rearranging my craft room from my bedroom into my now office, and it's just one of my favorites. I absolutely love this DIY. I thought it turned out so cute, so here you go. Here is one of my favorite fall floral arrangements from last year. For this one, I am going to use my COUTURE pumpkin transfer, and I'm really excited for this one because I absolutely loved this transfer when I saw it, and I knew I wanted to use it with this piece right here. This is a frame that I picked up from Target and some scrapbook paper from Michael's, and I just love this piece, but I knew I wanted something on the front, so I just took out the glass from the front of the frame. It's technically not glass, it's more of like a plexiglass maybe. It's really kind of plastic feeling. So I'm going to take that transfer and I'm just going to fuzz it on up on our material here that you get from COUTURE. So I'm going to do this several times so that the back isn't too sticky. And then I'm just going to lay it on top of that glass, get it all nice and centered. And then I am going to use 4 different colors for this transfer. So I started off with my orange peel color and just put that all over my pumpkin. And if you didn't know, I did become a designer with COUTURE, and I just think that they are so much fun, and I love playing around with them and creating all, different looks for the transfers. I just think it's a lot of fun. So then I just did a white for the top words, and then I'm using the shade Eucalyptus for the words at the bottom. And then I'm also going to use the shade Storm for the arrows at the bottom as well. Now this was a little bit trickier to pull off. It did stick to that plastic glass a lot more than I was hoping, so it did take me a minute to get off of there. I probably needed to fuzz it up a couple more times, but in the end, I thought that it turned out so pretty, and even better, I can go wash the transfer and use it again on another project. So all I did was reinsert the glass back into the frame, put that scrapbook paper behind it, added the back, and that's it for this DIY. I think this turned out super pretty. If you're ever interested in COUTURE, I will link the website in my description box. One, you are going to take one of these signs. Now, when I first started doing this, I was planning on using the middle. I have yet to figure out how to get the picture of the truck from off of this sign without completely ruining it. So I'm determined to use it somehow. I just don't know yet. So I'm just going to start by cutting off the sides where I pulled up from the box, so just the sides of the sign, and I'm going to cut those down because I'm going to use them on one of these Wi-Fi password tag signs from the Dollar Tree, and I wanted them to be kind of like a little border on the sign. So I'm just going to cut those down, and then for the sign, for the tag sign, I'm going to use my Dixie Belle paint and fluff, and I just gave it one good coat. And then I'm going to take those pieces from that truck sign and I'm just going to hot glue it to the top and the bottom. And then I'm going to take these Harvest DIY words that are new from the Dollar Tree. I was so excited to find these, and I picked out the Hello Fall. I'm going to use that same rusty orange like we used in the previous project, and I'm just going to give that all one good coat of paint, and I'm just going to super glue that right to the middle of our tag sign. And then I'm going to take those same sunflowers, I'm going to cut off all the wires from the back, I'm going to do 3 of them, and I'm going to hot glue them right below the Hello Fall. So 1 in the middle and then 2 on the sides. Once those are all nice and stuck down to my sign, I'm going to take some more raffia and make a bigger bow. I just put several strands together and then did 2 loops and tied them together, and that's how I made this. Really, really easy, and I just love the raffia bows for the fall time. I just think they're so much fun and cute, and they just add, you know, another touch of fall to your decor. So I'm just gonna hot glue that right to the top. I added some twine through the hole at the top of the tag sign, and that's it for this DIY. This was so easy. It only cost me a couple dollars, and I just think this is so cute. So I'm going to take the tumbling tower blocks that you can get from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to start super gluing them together. So I'm going to do 1 set of 4, and then I'm going to do 2 sets of 3. And I just use this ruler to help keep everything nice and level. So I just add my super glue, put my blocks together, and continue super gluing them. So for my first little pumpkin is what I'm going to make. You are going to need a set of 4 together. You're going to need 2 sets of 2, and you're going to need 2 sets of 3. And then for the second pumpkin that I'm going to make, I'm just going to do 2 sets of 2 and 1 set of 3, as you can see here. And then for my first pumpkin, I'm just going to start assembling everything together. So you're going to do the 1 set of 4 in the middle, and then super glue the set of 3 on each side. So your 1 set of 3 on one side, 1 set of 3 on the other side, keeping it in the middle, and then you'll do your 2 sets of 2 on top of those. And then I'll just do the same thing for my second one. Use the 1 set of 3 in the middle, and then the 2 sets of 2 will go on either side of that. And then I just took my miter shears and a dowel from the Dollar Tree, and I put my miter shears at a 45-degree angle, and I cut 2 little stems for my pumpkins. These work so well for this kind of DIY and make it so I don't have to take anything to a saw, just use them with my miter shears. And then I'm just going to start painting my pumpkins. This is just all in some apple barrel paint with a deep rusty orange, and then I ended up mixing this yellow and orange together to kind of create a little bit more of a lighter orange, and I did that for my smaller pumpkin. And I only gave both of these pumpkins just 1 coat of paint. And then for my stems with the dowels, I'm just taking my Waverly Wax and Antique and just staining those. And I just took my super glue, added a little dot to the bottom of my stems, and super glued them right to the top of my pumpkins. Now, to dress these up a little bit, I am going to take some raffia that I picked up from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to start by taking some and wrapping it around the stem of this smaller pumpkin. I just do this a couple times and then tie it in a double knot to keep it in place, and then I just tied myself a little raffia bow just by doing 2 loops and tying those together. I just adjusted the loops as necessary depending on how big I wanted that bow. And then I just hot glued that right to the top of my stem, and that's going to be it for this one. And then for my orange pumpkin, I'm going to take one of these sunflowers that you can also get from the Dollar Tree. I just removed the little wire that was on the back just by cutting it off, and then I'm going to make another bow with some raffia, but this one, I wanted it to be a little bit bigger, so I just wrapped it around my index finger and my thumb a couple of times, used an excess piece of raffia and tied it around the middle, and that's as easy as it gets to create one of these bows, and I think these are so cute. I just cut off the excess for the tails, and I'm just going to hot glue that down to my top of my pumpkin where the stem is, and then I'll take that sunflower, hot glue that right to the middle as well. And that's it for this DIY. You could make these as big as you wanted. I just think that these are so much fun. Now for this DIY, I wanted to try something a little different than all of my typical, signs and decor pieces like that. So I wanted to create a garland or a banner, and I just found some leaves on CRICUT Design Space that I liked. I put them to the size that I wanted, and then I also put 10 of each leaf in a color, if that makes sense. So there will be 10 of each style of leaf. So just find 3 leaves that you like, get them to the size that you want. I believe I made them 3 inches tall for each one, and then I just messed around with this placement on my mats for when I cut them with my felt. So again, I'm going to make sure that I have felt and my rotary blade in place. I cut all those out using the felt that I showed earlier with all these really pretty fall colors. And then I am going to start using my crocodile tool to punch holes in the tops of my leaves. So that's what I'm going to do to be able to string those leaves onto my twine. And you probably could have done this with your CRICUT as well, but I just figured it would probably be quicker if I just punched the holes myself instead of having the CRICUT go through all 30 of them one by one. So I just went through again, did 2 holes in each piece, and then I began stringing my leaves onto my twine. And I just did a pattern of certain colors and certain leaves, made sure that they were all facing the same direction as well. For all of my leaves except for my maple leaves, I did add some glue at the top and pinch it together, so it gave it, more of that enclosed leaf look. You can see what I'm doing here. So I just did that to all of them besides the maple leaves. You could make this really, really full by adding a ton of these leaves on here, or you could add some beads onto the garland as well. I think that would be really cute. I just think that this was so much fun, and it's a project that I feel like is outside the box when it's coming to CRICUT. I know for me, a lot of times when I think of CRICUT, I just think of signs, but there are so many other things that you can do besides just vinyl and signs, other materials that you can use, and I just thought that this one was really, really fun. I'm just gonna tie a knot on both of the ends to tie it off, and this is how my little leaf garland turned out. I love all the colors on this, and I just think it's so much fun for fall. I think it'd be really cute hanging up over your mantle or really wherever. I love this one. Through the Kirkland's website and went over to the Harvest Fall Decor. I'm so excited for all this stuff. They just had so many beautiful pieces. And when I saw this Welcome Friends piece with the beaded garland, I was really, really excited. I just thought this was gorgeous and I knew I could recreate it for a fraction of the cost. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to grab one of these 12 by 12 canvases that I got in a pack, I believe from Joann's or Hobby Lobby, possibly even Michael's. But I just grabbed this canvas frame and I'm going to remove the canvas off of the frame itself because I want that bare wood frame. So I'm just going to take a knife and go around and cut it off. You could take the staples out if you wanted to. I personally didn't feel the need to because I'm going to cover it up anyways, and it takes a ton of time to go through and take all the staples out. So I just go through and remove all the canvas from the staples, and then I'm going to set that canvas to the side because we are going to need it. So I am going to take my Waverly chalk paint in Elephant and I'm going to paint the entire frame in this color, and I only did one coat. So when creating the decal for this piece, it's really, really easy. I'm just going to go into my design space. Now, I have already pre-made all of these designs, so I will have a link down in my description box. If you have a Cricut and you want to make them, you can have the link to all of these designs, so it's super easy. But if you want to see how I put them together, all I'm going to do is type out welcome, I'm going to type out friends, and then I'm going to go through and change the font. The font for the welcome is in Otherwise CLN. It's one that I had purchased, I believe, off Design Bundles. And then for friends, it is going to be in the font Elmira. It's this really pretty cursive. And I'm going to show you how you can get the little swirls on the end of the F and the S, or the little, the little end there, because you can see here, it doesn't come up with that. So if you want to get the little beginning and ending swirl type piece on the word friends, this is how you would do it. So again, this is a font that I purchased and downloaded to my computer. So I will go over to my computer search bar and type in character map. And then I will go into the font that I'm using. So I will just go find that font down on the left-hand side. When I have found that font, I'll click on it and then I'll scroll down until I see the alphabet with the little swirls on the front and the ends. So you can see they have them down there. I'll find the F and then I'll go down to copy. I'll go back to my Cricut design space. I'll double click on my word. I'll highlight the F and then I'll just do Control V to paste it. And now you have the little swirly piece on the front of your F. And then you do the same thing for the S. You just find the S, copy it, and then paste it onto your S on the word friends. And that's all you have to do for that. Super, super easy. And then all you're going to do is just size it to the size of your project. Click on make it. Now for this one, because we're using the canvas, remember to mirror your design and don't forget to weld your design as well so that the word friends will cut out as one piece instead of each individual letter. And then you'll click continue and you'll just mark whichever type of material you're using. You'll want to click on iron on vinyl, shiny side down, and you'll cut out your decal. And I'm going to be using my Cricut Maker to cut out my decals for this video. This is one that I recently purchased with my own money. It was on a really good deal because the Maker 3 and the Explorer Air 3 are out now, so they've marked down the Maker, and I only had the Explorer 2 before, so I figured why not take a step up. It was on a really great deal, so I snagged it up. So once that's done, I'm just going to weed out my design. Now, when using HTV, it's a whole lot easier to weed than regular just adhesive vinyl because the vinyl itself isn't sticky, so you don't have to worry about it touching other pieces of your vinyl and it sticking to it and then completely ruining your whole project. I've had that done so many times and it's so frustrating. So I personally love weeding HTV. because it is so easy. And then I am going to lay my frame on top of my canvas just to get kind of an idea of where I want everything to sit. So I'm going to put my words down, my vinyl down, try to get a good idea of where I want it to go. And once I have it where I want it, I'll just press down on it so that the backing will stick to my canvas. And I'm also using the back side of the canvas, just as a side note, for this project. Then I'm going to take my CRICUT heat press and a Teflon sheet just as, you know, an extra layer of protection, and I'm going to set that to 320 for 15 seconds. I was somehow lucky enough to find a wooden garland with leaves that were similar in shape to the original one on Kirkland's website. So I picked these up from Walmart. I believe it was $2.98 for this garland, and I thought this was perfect. So I just grabbed out 2 leaves that were similar in color, and then I'm going to grab 4 large beads and my Dixie Belle vintage duck egg paint, my absolute favorite color right now, and I thought it was perfect because it did match the original picture too. So I just took 4 of those. I only ended up needing 3. So I'm going to take some more natural wood beads that are smaller than the Dixie Belle ones. I will string 2 of those in between each of the larger bead, string on my leaves, more beads, just, you know, repeat that pattern until I have 3 sets of the beads. And then I'll just start assembling it all just using some hot glue. I'm just going to use that to attach my canvas down to my frame. And before I get to the very top, I'll stop a little ways so that I can insert my little garland piece, and I just made the twine go up through the top corner of each side, and then I just hot glued that down to the back. And the last thing that I did was just hot glue the bottom of the leaves down to a certain spot so that they weren't twisting or turning, and they were, you know, facing straight, and I didn't have to worry about moving them back that way. So just hot glued those down, and that's it for this one. I thought this turned out so cute. It's not an exact dupe, but I do think it looks pretty similar, and I'm loving the way that this one turned out. One, I'm gonna pick up this big chunky yarn. You can get this from Michael's, Joann's, Hobby Lobby, anywhere. And I don't know about you, but I love the big chunky blankets, but they are super expensive, and I wanted a mini one so that I could put it in some of my wicker baskets and decorate with it. And so I just thought that I could make one myself. So I followed Catherine from Do It on a Dime, her video that she has on making big chunky blankets like this. And I've knitted in the past, but by all means, I am not an experienced knitter. So it's all very still new to me. If I can do it, you can do it. So you don't need any tools but your hands and the yarn. I'm also going to link Catherine's video in my description box because she explains it way better than I'm going to be able to. If you want to learn how to do it, I'd highly recommend watching her video. So first, I am going to make a slip knot with my yarn just by making a loop and pulling that through. So I'm just going to start with this loop right here, and then all you're going to do is pull your yarn through and create another loop. And you are going to do this as many times as you want, depending on how long you want your blanket, or, you know, just your little piece that you're going to use to decorate with. I did 11 loops. So each time I make a loop, I'm just going to take my yarn and then pull that yarn through the loop and make a new loop. So I just tried making sure that all my loops were about the same size. And again, I'm just going to keep making those loops until I get 11 loops. Now, when you get to the end, you want to make sure that you make one more loop than you want your blanket long. So I made 11 loops. I'm going to make a 12th loop, and that will start the next line of my blanket. Once I have that 12th loop through, I'm going to take my yarn and I'm going to start pulling it through those other loops at the top. So hopefully you can see what I'm doing here, but I'm just gonna take my yarn and pull it through that loop that we already made up at the top, and I'm going to make sure that those loops are all the same size. So again, I'm just pulling my yarn through that loop and making sure that that loop is the same size as the other loops that I've made. Once you get these 2 rows done, the rest is really easy. So once you have all of these loops finished, at the end, make sure that you do a second loop through your last loop to make sure that you always have the same number of loops. So again, since I created 11 loops to begin with, I want to make sure that each time I'm creating my loops, I have 11 loops in each row. Hopefully that makes sense. Again, I would highly recommend watching Catherine's video. She explained it so much better. So now that I have all that done, for the rest of this, all you're going to do is pull your yarn through those loops that you already have created and make more loops. That's what you're going to do each time. So just take your yarn, pull it through, make a loop over and over and over again until you have the size of blanket that you want. I used almost the entire skein of this yarn. It had a little bit left, and in fact I probably could have done another line or two, but I wanted to play it safe and make sure that I didn't run out. So I'm just going to keep doing this until my yarn is almost used up. If I can do this with the baby sitting in front of me trying to play with it, I promise you can do this. So to cast off and finish off the blanket, what you're going to do is take your first 2 loops, you're going to take the second loop in your line, put it through the first loop, and then pull that second loop through. Now you're going to take your third loop in the line, and you're going to take your yarn, you're going to make another loop. Now you're going to take that loop that you just made, put it through that second loop in the line, and pull your third loop through. And you're just going to follow this through the entire line until you get to the very end. So you'll make another loop, and you'll take that, put it through your first loop there, pull that loop over, and then do the same thing. Now when you get to the very end, you're going to do the exact same thing. You're just going to pull your loop through, and then you're going to take your yarn and you're just going to tie a simple knot, and you can take the excess yarn that you have and just kind of weave it through your blanket. And that's it. That's all you got to do for this one. And I think this is so cute in a basket, a wicker basket with pumpkins and leaves on top of it. I just think it looks so cozy to me. So again, I will have Catherine's video linked in my description box if you want a more in-depth tutorial on it, on how to make this type of blanket. Project, I saw this Crisp Autumn Days wall hanger and I just thought this was so pretty. I love the blue for fall. I feel like it's something that's really popular this year, and mixed with those orange watercolor like leaf and pumpkin. I just thought this was really pretty and I knew I could recreate it. So I just went over to my Cricut design space, typed up the words. I used the font England Signature, and again, this is something that I purchased off of design bundles, and I just thought that this font matched pretty well with the original. And you don't really need to keep them in a certain way because I am going to be cutting them all apart in the end anyway. So just as long as the words are the size that you need them, you can always size to your sign once you get your sign all ready to go. So I'm going to take one of these chalkboard signs that you can get from the Dollar Tree. The words and everything on the front were already coming off, so I just took a razor blade and kind of scraped off as much as I possibly could, and then used some alcohol to kind of wipe up the rest. It came off pretty easy, so I wasn't too worried about it, and then I could have a finished backing since I wouldn't have to use the back. So I just took my Dixie Belle paint and fluff, and I did give about 2 coats to get the black completely covered up. Now I am going to take one of these stake pieces that came off of some signs from the Dollar Tree, the little yard stake signs, and I'm going to measure this to the size of my sign, and I'm going to cut out 2 pieces because I am going to use these as a border for my sign. So I just grabbed some brown paint. I'm going to paint both of these pieces. Once those are dry, I'm going to use this as a template for now, but I'm going to take some painter's tape and I'm going to start making the stripes that were on that sign. Now, it had a stripe immediately from the top portion of the sign or the frame, and then it had a blue stripe right next to that. And so I just measured the distance from the top portion to the blue stripe and laid some painter's tape down and painted a stripe right there. The top part doesn't matter because it is going to be covered up. And I just do that to the top and the bottom. And then I'm going to just start making some more stripes. So I just laid my painter's tape a little bit over the top of that blue stripe that we already had going. And then I just used some more painter's tape to create another line. And I'm just, again, going to do that on the top and bottom. Now, the inspiration piece did have 3 stripes on the top and the bottom, but if I did a 3rd stripe, it was going to take way too much of my sign that I needed to use for the other pieces. So I decided to just stick with 2 stripes. Obviously, if you had a longer sign, you could definitely do this, or I could have made the stripes smaller, but I felt like for the size of the sign, those stripes were perfect. So I'm going to take a leaf and a pumpkin that you can get from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to use some wood filler to fill in those holes at the top. And then once those are dry, I'm going to take some orange paint, and I did use some water in there, so it is pretty watered down. And then I got a damp sponge, and I'm just going to make dabbing motions all over the leaf and the pumpkin. I didn't want this to be perfect by any means, and in the inspiration picture, it did have a lot of different colors. There was, not different colors, but more of different shades of orange. A lot lighter spots of orange, a lot darker spots of orange. So I also did mix in a little bit of brown to get a darker orange and dab all over there. I just kind of wanted that watercolor, not so perfect look to the leaf and the pumpkin. And then I'll just start hot gluing the leaf and the pumpkin down on the top corner and the bottom corner, just like the picture. And then I'm going to take my decals that I cut out, I'll add my CRICUT transfer tape to it, and then I'll just cut out each word individually. Since my sign was a little bit smaller and my pumpkin and my leaf were a little bit bigger, I needed to kind of rearrange the placement of them. So that's why I used them in 4 separate pieces rather than in one big piece to lay down, and I just individually placed each word on and used my burnishing tool to get the word stuck on there, remove the transfer tape, and that's it. You could add a hanger to this one if you want, just like the inspiration picture on Kirkland's website. I decided not to for now, but that is, like I said, something you could definitely do. Otherwise, I think that this sign turned out so pretty. Only cost me I don't know, maybe $3 possibly to make, and I just think that this turned out so pretty. For this DIY, I'm going to take 3 of these wooden pumpkins that you can get from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to just start by removing the raffia bow on all 3. I'm going to start by painting this first one in this really pretty mustard color by Apple Barrel. I am obsessed with this color, so I just go through and give the entire thing one good coat of this color, and then I'm just going to kind of add some more details to it. So I'm going to take some white paint, I will brush that over it, and then I'll go back in with my yellow paint, and I'll just kind of just back and forth between the 2 colors until I'm getting that detail that I'm really looking for. And just blending it in, I don't wait for the layers in between to dry, so I'm just doing a lot of blending, and that's about it. It gives it a really nice dimensional look so that it doesn't look so flat. And then I'm going to go in with this Craft Smart paint. It's a really pretty pumpkin spice kind of a color. And I'm going to do the exact same thing that I did with my yellow pumpkin. I'll paint this all orange, and then I'll go in with some white and just do a lot of blending back and forth between the 2 colors, trying to just get a little bit more detail on my pumpkins. And then for my last one, I'm going to paint it white, and I'll go in with some brown paint to add the details like I did with the first 2. Once that is all done, I'm going to take some brown paint, and I'm just going to kind of go around the edges of the pumpkins, those ridges and the sides, just to make them pop out a little bit more, make them look a little bit more rustic. And I also used that to paint the stems as well. And then I'm going to assemble my pumpkins. I'm going to have them stacked on top of each other. So I just kind of played around with where I wanted the pumpkins to be, the colors, which ones I wanted where, and I'm just going to use some hot glue to assemble them. So I just put some hot glue on the bottom of one, put the other pumpkin on top, and then did the same thing for the middle pumpkin. And then just to add some more reinforcement, I just took some hot glue on the back where the pumpkins overlapped each other. And then I tied 3 jute twine bows just by wrapping it around my index finger and my thumb about 2 to 3 times, and then tying a knot in the middle. And then I just hot glue those to each pumpkin, and that's all you have to do. I set this outside by my front door, and I think it looked absolutely adorable with all my other pumpkins. For this next one, I grabbed this sign from the Target dollar spot several years ago. It's been sitting in my stash, so today I finally decided to get it out and use it. I'm just going to start taking it all apart, removing all the twine and the staples, and then I did take it out to my garage and cut 2 of the pieces down so that they would be smaller than the middle piece. And I'm just going to use some super glue to attach all 3 of these planks together. And then I'm going to paint this with my Dixie Belle paint. I will have the name of it in my description box because I cannot remember it at the moment. But if you want to know what color it is, I'll have it in the description box. And I just did 2 coats of this Dixie Belle paint. paint. And then I headed over to my design space and I am going to take a square and measure it to the size of my sign. This is just going to help me to size my words to the correct size, and as well the pumpkins that I'm going to use. So I just started out by putting in Hello Fall, and then I found several pumpkins that I liked. I just went and scrolled through, found some that I thought could work, and then I'm going to insert those into my project. And then because some of the pumpkins aren't solid, I'm going to click the contour button and go through and make it so that they are just a solid outline of the pumpkin instead of having all the cuts in the middle. And I'm going to size my pumpkins down, figure out where I want them, what pumpkins I want, in what order, all that good stuff. Once that is all done, I'm going to change the colors so that each piece cuts on the correct mat. And I'm going to head over to my Cricut to cut these out. So for my pumpkins, I'm actually going to be using felt. And I got this pack of felt off of Amazon. I thought this was super pretty because of all the fall colors. And so I just went through and picked some colors that I liked for my pumpkins, a yellow and these pretty oranges and burnt oranges. I just thought they were gorgeous. And I'm going to switch out my blade to the rotary blade for my Cricut Maker. And then I'm going to use a fabric mat with my felt, and I am just going to cut that. So again, make sure that your settings on Design Space are all the correct ones with the felt and which tool you're using. This just completely changed the game for me with cutting fabrics. I cannot cut fabrics by myself at all, and look how cute these pumpkins turned out. They are perfect. So being able to use my Cricut for projects like this is a huge time saver because my pumpkins actually look like pumpkins instead of, if I was freehanding it, they'd probably just look like blobs. So I'm just gonna go through and stick my vinyl down where I want it. And then I'm going to take some white twine and some beads, and I'm going to string 6 beads onto that twine. And then I'm going to start by taking my middle pumpkin and just hot gluing that down right in the center over the twine. And then I'm just going to start adding all my other pumpkins. I'll tie off the ends so that the twine and the beads are all stuck in place, and I'll hot glue those down. And then I hot glue my pumpkins on top of the twine. And that's it. That's all you have to do for this DIY. You'll cut off the excess twine on the sides. I think this turned out super, super adorable. And I love that it's got the felt and the vinyl and the beads. There's just so many different elements to it, and I'm loving it. This one, I grabbed this pumpkin cutout from Michael's. It was $7.99, but their Halloween and fall stuff is 30% off right now. So I picked that up, and then I also went to my local Goodwill, found this sweater for $3.99. They were also having a sale that day where I got an extra 20% off that. So I'm just going to take my pumpkin and I'm going to trace it on top of my sweater. And I just tried to place it where I felt like it was going to look the best, where I had the prettiest pattern. And I'm just going to go ahead and cut that pattern out of the sweater. And then after I do that, I'm going to lay my sweater piece on top of my pumpkin. And now I want the sides of the pumpkin to show. I want that wood to be seen. So I don't want the sweater to fully cover my pumpkin. I just want it to be a tad bit smaller. So I just took my scissors and went around all the edges and kind of cut off where I thought needed it and tried to shape it into, a better shape than what it was until I got it the way that I liked it. Once I had it all cut off, I took my gel super glue and just super glued this down. I was debating on what kind of glue would work best for this. I had a spray adhesive that did not work at all. So in the end, I just went with some super glue. I didn't want to do hot glue because I didn't want those bumps to be underneath it. You probably know what I'm talking about. So super glue is what worked best for me in this situation. And then I had these table accent pieces that I picked up from Target Dollar Spot last year, and I found this one that said Hello Fall, and I thought this would be perfect. I'm just going to super glue this right to the side of my pumpkin. And then I found these copper pins at Hobby Lobby, and I just thought that these were so cute, and I thought that they would look really pretty, and these were actually really easy to put on here. So I just added one to each end of the Hello Fall word sign and I just pushed it right in there. They just went right on in, not hard at all, and that's all you got to do for this DIY. I think this one turned out so pretty, and it's perfect for my cozy fall decor. I'm going to take one of these signs that you can get from the Dollar Tree. I love these because they have that wood look frame to them. I just think they're really cute. I took the little foam flower off the top, and then just to get that hot glue gone, I heated it up with my heat gun and just scraped it off. Now I'm going to take my glue stick and put that around all the edges and the inside, because I'm going to lay a piece of scrap paper down on top of it. I get a lot of questions if this actually holds well, and for me it does. I'm really bad at putting Mod Podge on my projects and keeping it wrinkle free, so this is just the easiest way I can do it with, without getting all the wrinkles. If you can do it with Mod Podge, by all means do that. I just prefer a glue stick. So I'm just going to cut off the remaining scrapbook paper off the sides, and then I got these pumpkins that you can get from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to take 3 of those out and paint them. These ones were shaped differently than the pumpkins that we got last year. They have more ridges in them, which I think is really cute, but I wanted to give these a good coat of a spicy pumpkin type color. I just think this is really pretty for fall, and I'm going to try to add some detail to it as best as I can. And to do that, I'm just going to take some brown paint, and with a really flat, smaller brush, I'm going to try to get in those grooves of where a pumpkin would naturally have grooves. Hopefully you can tell what I'm doing here, but my trick in doing this is not letting the paint completely dry while I go with these in between layers. So the orange on my pumpkins is still wet, and then I'm going in with that brown, drawing the lines or the grooves, and then going back over it with the orange, going back over it with the brown, just kind of a back and forth process. And then I also do the same thing with some white. I'll draw some white on there where the grooves of the pumpkin would be, and just kind of going back and forth, just a lot of blending, a lot of layers. And I just did this until I got it the way that I liked it, the way that I thought it looked cute. There are so many different ways you could do this. You could just leave it plain if you wanted, but I just went back and forth until I liked it. And then I also did the same technique with the other pumpkin that I'm going to be using, but I'm going to paint this one white. So I will give it just one coat of white paint, and then I'll just take the same brush that I'm using the whole time. I'll dip it in the brown paint, mix a little bit of white with it, draw the lines, keep going over it, do the white, do the brown, really just over and over and over again until it comes out the way that I like it. So it's just a lot of messing around with it and blending colors. I just think this is really fun, and it's actually really relaxing for me. So pumpkins are one of my favorite things to paint. Then I'm going to take this thankful word that you can get in a pack from the Dollar Tree with a couple other words, and I wanted to tone down the galvanized look to it. So what I did was I took that same paintbrush that I had been using on the white pumpkin with the white and the brown, and I just kind of dabbed all over it. And then I wanted to make sure that it popped off of the white scrapbook paper, so I took some gray paint and just kind of went around all the edges. I just wanted this to look really messy, just, you know, kind of old and worn, so I just kind of distressed it up a bit that way. And then I'm just going to hot glue my 2 orange pumpkins to the bottom on either side, and then I'll hot glue my white pumpkin right down to the middle, and you only have to put the hot glue on the sides where they'll touch the orange pumpkins. And then I'm just going to take some gel super glue onto my middle word, because hot glue is really hard to make work with this. It just dries really fast. So gel super glue is what I found to work. And then I'm going to make 2 bows out of some twine. I just wrap it around my index finger and my thumb twice, and then you just take an excess piece of twine and wrap it around the middle and tie a knot. And that's all you have to do to make really cute twine bows. And I'm going to make 2 of those, one for each of the orange pumpkins. And then for the middle pumpkin, I'm going to take some raffia, and I'm just going to put a couple strands together and do 2 loops, tie it together like a school bow, and then cut off the excess, hot glue it to the top. And that's it for this DIY. These were so much fun to do. I think this is super, super cute. I'm going to take my CRICUT transfers. I love these ones. Look at how many fun little pumpkin pieces there are on here, all the pumpkin patterns. I loved this one because it reminded me of a sweater. So I'm going to cut that out, and I'm going to fuzz it a ton of times over and over again so that it is not too sticky on my wood. So I got this wood tag from Joann's. It was only a couple dollars, and I'm going to line up my pumpkin transfer on this so that there are no curves showing, because I just want this at the bottom of the tag. I don't want it to actually look like a pumpkin. So I'm just going to put that on there so that there will be no curves onto my tag. And then I'm also going to take some washi tape that I also fuzzed multiple times so that it wasn't too sticky on top of my transfer. And I'm going to lay that down so that there's a nice straight line across the top. And then I'm going to take this really beautiful sparkly yellow. I just think this is so pretty. And I'm going to take my squeegee and I'm just going to put that on there with the littlest amount of chalk paste. It takes hardly any at all. This is going to last me a super long time. If you guys are ever interested in CRICUT, I always have it linked in my description. But look how pretty this turns out. I just absolutely love it. And then I just cut out this sweater weather decal using my CRICUT. I'm just going to use this as basically a stencil. I'm just going to put it onto my tag sign and then remove the transfer tape, and then I'm just going to paint over it. So I'm going to use my Dixie Belle paint in burlap. I have been getting a lot of questions about the Dixie Belle paint because I've been using it a lot lately. I absolutely love it. A lot of people ask me if I like it better than Waverly, and the answer is yes. I only have to do one coat the majority of the time with this paint. I just think it looks absolutely gorgeous, and it just, the coverage on it is pretty amazing. So again, I always have Dixie, Belle, and COUTURE linked in my description box. You can always find those links down there if you're ever interested. I just personally love them. I just got a whole ton of different colors in the mail. I bought a lot of it and I am really excited to keep using them. Look out in the future for Dixie Belle giveaways. They will be coming soon. And yeah, I'm just really excited for Dixie Belle. I think that they have really great paints and I was pleasantly surprised when I first tried them out. So I just gave my sign one good coat and then I'm just going to remove the vinyl that I had laid down, and here you can see the sweater weather words popping through. And then I'm going to take the twine that was on there originally, I'm just going to tie that back on there, and then I cut up a little piece of that sweater that we used with the first DIY with this sweater, and I just cut a little piece off. I'm going to tie a knot around the middle where the paint meets the COUTURE paint and tie a knot, cut off the excess sweater piece, and that's it for this DIY. When I saw this "Hey There Pumpkin" sign on Kirkland's, I just thought this was so cute. Now, the inspiration piece, this one is a lot bigger than the one that I'm going to do. It's more of a large hanging piece, but I did not have the ability to make that big of a sign at the moment. But I bet if you took the really large pumpkin craft wood pieces that you can get from the Dollar Tree, you could probably make one this big, but I decided to make a smaller version of it. So again, really simple. I just went onto my design space on CRICUT, typed in the words "Hey There Pumpkin." For the "Hey There," it's in England signature font, and then for the word pumpkin, it is in linotype Rowena Pro Medium. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but you know, there you go. That's the font that it's in. So I just took one of these little box frames you can get from the Dollar Tree, and I didn't have any orange and white buffalo check paper, but I did have this really pretty yellow one that I thought would look really cute with the blue pumpkin as well. So I just used my sign to trace on the back of the paper and I cut that out. And then for the sides, I am just going to use my Dixie Belle Paint and Fluff to paint the sides. Again, I probably could have used the paper, but I didn't want to piece a bunch of paper together and have all the seams showing, so I thought that it would just look best to have just some plain white sides. And then for the pumpkin, I'm going to do kind of the same technique that I did for the previous pumpkin and leaf from my other project. And I just took a damp sponge with this blue paint from Dixie Belle, and I'm just doing up and down dabbing motions. And then to kind of take it even further, I took a baby wipe and I'm just doing up and down, kind of rubbing some paint off here and there, just making it look really messy. And then I'm just going to use my glue stick to glue on my scrapbook paper to the front of my sign. I'll weed out my "Hey There Pumpkin" decal, use the CRICUT transfer tape to transfer my vinyl on top of my pumpkin. Use some hot glue to hot glue that down to the middle of my sign, and that's it for this one. I think it turned out really cute. For this one, I'm going to take this Thankful and Blessed sign that I got from the Dollar Tree. I'm going to start by removing that twine hanger and this metal leaf and raffia bow. I'm going to fill in the holes on the pumpkin just using some wood filler wait for it to dry, and then sand it down. I'm going to paint the pumpkin with my Waverly chalk paint in white, and I just gave it one good coat, and then after that I did go through and add some lines and details to the pumpkin where the ridges would be. I'll show you how I did that on this other pumpkin that I'm going to paint. So I just used my mineral chalk paint to add the lines and ridges to my big white pumpkin. I'm going to use the word harvest from the metal words that you can get from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to use the steel paint to kind of go over that and tone down the shininess. So here I'm grabbing one of the color your own ornaments with the pumpkins that you can get from the Dollar Tree. I'm going to use a combination of the Waverly chalk paint in pumpkin and in truffle. So first I'm going to go through and add just a little bit of truffle to that pumpkin color, kind of mix it together, and then I'm going to go through and paint my pumpkin. I got it a little bit too dark at first, so I do go through with more pumpkin and just kind of paint over the entire thing. Once that is all painted, I'm going to take more of that pumpkin and truffle mixture and I'm going to start adding those ridges. This is the exact same thing that I did on my bigger pumpkin. I just kind of, did those curved ridges where they would be in an actual pumpkin. And I just did this kind of back and forth over and over and did a lot of blending until I got it the way that I liked it. And that's really all you have to do. Is just, your personal preference, what you like. Just go back and forth until it looks good to you. So that's exactly what I did with my larger pumpkin. And then I'm going to grab one of these other pumpkins that I got in a pack from Target Dollar Spot. And I'm just going to leave that pumpkin the way it is, and it will go on top of the orange pumpkin that we did. So I just went through with some sandpaper, roughed up my big white pumpkin, and then I'm going to take some twine and hot glue that down to the base of the stem. And then I'm just going to wrap that stem over and over and over, hot gluing periodically where I thought that it would need that extra hold. And I'm going to wrap my entire stem with some twine. Then I'm going to take my orange pumpkin and the white pumpkin from Target Dollar Spot. I'm going to kind of stack them on top of each other. I took some more twine, made a little bow out of it that I'm going to hot glue down to the top of the orange pumpkin. And then I'll just hot glue my white pumpkin down to my orange one, and then hot glue the orange one down to my white one. I'll lay my harvest word out and hot glue that down, and then I'm going to take that metal leaf that was on it before. I dabbed some of this steel gray paint on there again to tone down the shininess, hot glued that back down, hot glued the raffia bow down, and that's it for this one. It was really fun to do. This was actually one of my favorite projects from last year. For this DIY, I'm going to take one of these crates that you can get from the Dollar Tree. I'm just using a water-based stain. This is from Craftsmart. They no longer sell it, but any kind of water-based stain will do, or even if you just want to water down some of your favorite paint, that will give it a really pretty stain look too. So I just go through and stain the entire crate. And then I found this really cute welcome wood stickers from the Target Dollar Spot, and I decided that I didn't want that pattern on the front with the welcome words, so they actually peeled off really easy. So I just went through and peeled off the front of all of those to get that pattern off there, and I am just going to paint them with this folk art paint in, I believe it's sage, and I just gave the letters just one good coat of that. And then to distress my crate a little bit, I'm just going to take some Waverly chalk paint and ink and a chip brush, and I just go over all the edges and the sides and just rough my crate up a little bit. I do go over it with some white chalk paint as well. And then I'm going to take those wooden letters and I'm just going to start sticking them down. They were adhesive on the back, but you could always use some super glue or something else to give it a little bit more stick if you were worried about them coming off. And then to make them pop just a little bit more, I took a little bit of white paint and just went around the edges of each letter. And that's all you got to do for this one. I filled it with some pumpkins, and you could fill it with whatever you want, but I just think this looked really cute sitting on a shelf by my front door. This DIY is going to be super simple and quick and easy. You're going to grab one of these little autumn pillows from the Dollar Tree, and then this little frame and sign came from Target Dollar Spot. All I'm going to do is cut the pillow apart. I'm going to cut out the front of it that says "Give Thanks" with the pumpkin and the buffalo check. And I'm just going to cut it down to size to the back of that frame so that I can insert this into my picture frame. That's all I'm going to do. Just cut it down, insert it into my frame, put the backing in, and you have an adorable pumpkin sign. I just think this is super cute. I only spent maybe $2 on this. I struggled with this. So I'm gonna start out by using this star-shaped piping tip that I got from Michael's, I believe. Now, I tried this with air dry clay, and you can see it just did not work. So finally, after I'd made a huge mess, I grabbed some caulk that my husband had, and I put that in a piping bag and used that. That worked so much better. It's not gonna be, super solid and hard when it dries like the air dry clay would be, which is what I was hoping for. But it still dried really, really well. Yeah, like I said, it's not like rock solid, but it still is dry and it's kept its shape, and it's just, a little spongy, I would say. So I just use my piping tip, my star piping tip, and a bag to pipe some faux churros out. That is what I'm going for. I'm gonna make some fake churros. So I let those dry overnight, probably a good 12 to 20 hours, I would say, before I started painting them. So I'm just going to take my scissors when they're all dry, and I'm just gonna cut off the ends of them to make them look a little less messy, a little bit more clean. And then I'm going to take a caramel colored paint that I have from Apple Barrel. I believe it's just called Classic Caramel. And I just painted all of my faux churros this color. Now, once those are dry, I do go over the tops just a little bit more with some paint to get them tacky. And I'm going to take some cinnamon, and then I also took some white glitter, hoping that it would look like sugar. It kind of does. But I just took the cinnamon and the glitter and sprinkled it on top, kind of dragged my brush over it. You could definitely dip it in there, but I just decided to do, a little sprinkle look for it. So I would just get the top part of it wet with paint and then sprinkle the cinnamon mixture on top of it. And then I just spread it around, let that dry some more overnight, and then that's it. This is super, super fun. I just think it's really cute. I love all the fall festival sweets and foods, so this one was really fun to do. I grabbed this wood truck from the Dollar Tree, and I also have this sign from the Dollar Tree. I'm going to flip it on over and we're going to use the back. So I'm going to start by cutting off the pumpkins from the truck. I loved the pumpkins, but I wanted to do something a little bit different. So I just took my X-Acto knife and cut along there, and then I just kind of bent it back and forth until it broke off. And it was really as simple as that. Now I'm going to go through and use some wood filler on the sign where the holes are, just to cover those up so that you're not going to see those later. And then I also do that on the truck so that you can't see that hole at the top. Now I'm going to take some Waverly chalk paint in white, and I'm going to distress my sign. I'm not going to fully paint it. I want it to look messy. I want it to look rustic and weathered. So I do a very messy coat of this paint. And then I'm going to take some of this apple barrel paint in Atlantis, and that's the color I'm going to use to paint my truck. I think the blue trucks are really, really cute, and I felt like they were super in last year, so that is what I went for here. And while that dries, I'm going to go over to my sign. I did draw some shiplap lines on my sign, just right where each of the grooves are, where those plank looking pieces are. I just drew lines with a Sharpie, and I wanted to make it so that they weren't super harsh, so I am just taking some sandpaper and going over there. I also took some white paint because it wasn't working too well with the sandpaper, so I just tried to go over it with a little bit of white paint as well, just to kind of dull that down a bit. And then I went through with my sandpaper again, just over the edges and all of the little corners to make it look a little bit more distressed. I stained the back of my truck with some Craft Smart Stain in Gray. They are no longer making this, which makes me really, really sad. It's one of my favorite water-based stains, but that is what I used. And then I'm just going to take some black paint the wheels black, and then I'll take some gray paint for the middle. Now what I'm going to do is I want my truck to be raised off the back of the sign. So I took some Jenga blocks and put them behind there. Now I want to cut a little piece for the back of the truck so that when I put things inside the truck, it's not going to fall out the back. So I just cut a little piece of some popsicle stick down. I'm going to paint that the same color as the bed of the truck. And then I'm just going to start gluing things down. And then I'm going to take two Jenga blocks and I'm going to hot glue those together on the back of the truck so that when I put things in the truck, the Jenga blocks will hold them in place. And then I'm going to take a third Jenga block and hot glue it to the front of my sign just for that extra stability. I'll add some hot glue to those Jenga blocks and hot glue them down to my sign. And I cut this decal out using my CRICUT, and I'm just going to transfer this right to the top of my sign. I had found these really cute pumpkin cutouts last year at Target. They were only $1, and I just went through and found the pumpkins that I wanted to use. I love how it had multiple colors with the greens and oranges and whites. So I just went through and found a couple pumpkins that I thought would work. I took some raffia and wrapped it around the pumpkins and then just slid the pumpkins down on inside my truck. And that's all you have to do for this DIY. I think this turned out really, really cute. And I love that this can be an interchangeable truck as well. You can take the pumpkins out, put in a tree. You could put in all sorts of different things for different seasons. So this isn't one that you have to leave out during the fall. You could leave it out all year. I'm going to take a pumpkin that you can get from the Dollar Tree. Obviously, everything is basically from the Dollar Tree in this video, so you can get one of these from the Dollar Tree. And you are going to take out the stem at the top, you are going to paint the entire thing one coat of some Dixie Belle paint and fluff. I just gave it kind of like a primer coat to it to really cover up that orange, because I wanted to go in with another color, but I didn't want to use a ton of coats to cover up the bright neon orange. So I just gave that one good coat and let it completely dry. And then I'm going to go in with the Dixie Belle paint in Spanish Moss. I think this is such a gorgeous color. It's very like a faint browny green kind of color. I'm really bad at describing colors apparently, but I just thought that it was perfect for this DIY. So all I did was give it one coat and I let that completely dry, and then I'm going to go through and cut a hole right in the top. So I'm just going to cut out all that excess orange that I didn't paint over, just do a circle, and then I'm going to add some floral foam to the middle that I picked up from the Dollar Tree. I just cut it down, stuck it right inside, and then I'm going to use a mixture of florals from the Dollar Tree, from Michael's, from Hobby Lobby, all sorts of places. I love sunflowers for fall, so I thought these were really pretty. And then I also really loved these white berries from a pick that I got from Hobby Lobby, so I stuck those in there. I stuck the little raffia picks in there. And then I also grabbed some of these, I don't know exactly what they're called. I'm just going to call them fuzzy ball florals because that's what they look like to me. And I just grabbed one of those from the Dollar Tree and I'm going to stick those in there. And then I wanted another kind of pop of color, so I picked up these rusty orange berries from Michael's, a huge pick of them, and I just thought that they were gorgeous, so I just stuck some of those in there. And then to finish off, I'm going to take some of this farmhouse ribbon from the Dollar Tree. I'm going to tie it in a simple bow. I'm going to dovetail the ends, and then I'm just going to hot glue it to my pumpkin. And that's it for this one. You have a beautiful pumpkin floral arrangement that I just think looks so gorgeous and looks so cute sitting on my little farmhouse shelf. Why you are going to take some of this 5-foot maple garland from the Dollar Tree. Now I like this one because it has the pumpkins on it, but if you wanted to, Walmart also has a 6-foot garland for $2.98. So it's about a foot longer and it is a lot fuller than the ones that you get from the Dollar Tree. So I decided to take one of the ones from Walmart, and then I took about 5 of the ones from the Dollar Tree and I just wrapped them all together. I would use a piece of wire to hook them together on the ends, and then I would take the Dollar Tree garland and just wrap it around the Walmart one. And I just kept doing this until all 5 of my Dollar Tree garlands were gone and used up. And then you have a much fuller garland. So after I have all of those wrapped, I'm going to take some pumpkins that I had left over from last year from the Dollar Tree, the ones with the clips on the end, and then I'm just going to sporadically clip them around the garland, and that's all you got to do. I think this is super, super fun. You have a really full garland, and I feel like a garland this full at a different store would be a lot more money than $10. I mean, this garland cost me less than $10 to make. And anything like this, I feel like you're going to pay more than $10 for at, Hobby Lobby or Michael's or Joann's. So I thought this one was really fun as well. So I decided to make some faux popcorn. I grabbed these packing peanuts off of Amazon. Obviously, you can get them at any of your shipping stores. I decided that I didn't need a big bag of them, so I just picked up as small of a bag as I could on Amazon. All you gotta do for this is take those packing peanuts and just squish them. It's as simple as that. I prefer to have mine cut in half because I like the smaller pieces and I just feel like it looks more like popcorn that way. So I would just take some scissors and cut them in half and then just sit and squish them all up. There's really nothing else to it. It's super easy. It does, take a while to go through all those packing peanuts depending on how many you want. I just did enough to fill 2 small jars that I got from Dollar Tree. So turn on a good movie and just squish those packing peanuts. Then I grabbed, like I said, these 2 jars from Dollar Tree. They had the cute buffalo check print at the top. They were in their fall section. And then I just filled both of the containers up with the fake popcorn. You could always go into, paint the popcorn if you want to make it look like there's butter on it or, some different kind of seasoning. I just left it plain as is because I thought it looked perfect. And then I grabbed these 2 little chalkboard signs from the Dollar Tree and I just wrote kettle corn on them. And then I just super glued them to the front of my containers. And that's it. This DIY is super easy and I just think it's so much fun. I grabbed this wreath. I believe that I picked it up from Hobby Lobby. I'm going to go in with a ton of different florals. I picked a bunch up from Michael's. I want to say the majority of this is from Michael's, but I do think that I also used some things from Hobby Lobby and from Walmart. These were just so beautiful. I left this wreath up for a really long time last year. I just loved it. I love these muted mauve-y pink tones and it's just gorgeous to me. So I plan on putting it back out on my front door for the fall season. So I'm just gonna go start with some eucalyptus that I believe came from Walmart, and I'm just gonna start cutting those down and then I will insert them so that they're all going the exact same direction around the entire wreath. I'm also going to be using floral wire to help attach everything together. I like using that better than hot glue just because then I can reuse my wreath and I can reuse my florals without a big glue mess. That's just what I prefer. So I just grab some floral wire and start attaching it to my wreath and, twisting it around, manipulating it to the way, I want it to wrap around my wreath. It's pretty easy and self-explanatory. I'm going to take these leaves that I also got from Michael's. I thought these were so pretty and I loved the colors of them, and I'm pretty sure that I saw them again this year. So if you want them, I'm pretty sure that they are in their fall section again. So I just keep going through with some flowers and some berries and all sorts of different types of florals, some sunflowers, and I just started sticking them around wherever I saw fit, cutting them off of the picks, and that's about it. There's really nothing more to it than just inserting your florals into the wreath. I love these grapevine wreaths because of how easy it is to make your own wreaths with them. You just stick your ends into the wreath and they stay really, really well. You don't have to wire everything down. It will stay pretty well just inserted into the wreath. And that's it. That's it for this DIY. I love this fall wreath. Let me know what you think in the comments. For this one, I'm going to make a pumpkin topiary. So Walmart has their fall stuff out right now, and I was so excited to find these. They are $6 each, and they are a pretty good size too. So I picked up quite a few of them, and I just started by taking the stems off of two that are going to be on the bottom and the middle, and then I did have to kind of cut around the top of them if they didn't come out, but it was perfectly fine, and I plan on saving these stems because they are so realistic looking that I want to have them for other projects. So once I have the stems out, I'm just going to start by hot gluing the top and the middle one together, just putting that hot glue around the top portion and then sticking my pumpkin down on top of it. And then I do the exact same thing for the top pumpkin, just hot glue it right down to the middle. And then I took some raffia to kind of embellish it a little bit, put it in between the pumpkins so it kind of looks like it had been, you know, in a hayfield and there was hay stuck to it. So I just took my hot glue and just stuck a bunch of raffia in wherever I felt like it needed it. And then I also grabbed these really cute sunflowers from Michael's. I just cut two of the flowers off and then hot glued it in between the pumpkins as well. And then that's it for this one. You could always add a bow on top or do any other kind of embellishments, but I just thought this one was really, really cute. I'm going to take this glass piece that I got from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to take the sleeve of that same sweater that I've been using, and I'm just going to pull that up over it, and I'm just going to keep pulling until I have as much of the sweater that I want, and then I'll just cut off the excess at the bottom. Now I'm just going to trim up the bottom and super glue it to the bottom of my glass, or my vase, I guess you could call it. And then I'm going to add some more super glue to the inside of it, and I'm going to fold down that sleeve portion and stick that to the inside. And then I am going to cut up another piece and cut that piece down, and I'm going to have that wrap around my vase, or my candle holder is what I'm going to call it. I took some leaves that I had from a pick from Hobby Lobby. I'm going to put that on the front, and then I'm just going to tie the sweater piece around the front of that, do a double knot, cut off the excess, and then I just added a tea light from Dollar Tree. Obviously, don't put a real candle in here. Do a fake candle, and that's it for this one. So I'm going to take a foam pumpkin that I got last year from the Dollar Tree. I had just painted it white, and then I'm going to take a sleeve from a sweater that I got from Goodwill, and I'm just going to insert the pumpkin at the biggest part of the sleeve where the shoulder would be rather than where the wrist would be, so that it would actually go on it a little better. And I'm going to hot glue the bottom of the sweater to the bottom of the pumpkin. And then I'm just going to cut off the excess sweater at the top, and then I'm going to add some hot glue where I cut that hole at the top of the pumpkin, and I'm just going to insert the sweater into there, push it all into that hole, and then I grabbed one of these branches that you can get in a pack from the Dollar Tree, added some hot glue, added some leaves, again from the same pick that I got from Hobby Lobby, onto my pumpkin. And then I'm just going to make a raffia bow to add to my pumpkin just by putting multiple strands of raffia together and wrapping it around my index finger and my thumb, and then just taking an excess piece of raffia through the middle, tying a double knot, and then you have yourself a super cute bow. I just hot glued that to the top part of my pumpkin, and that's it. You can do these in so many different colors and so many different sweater patterns or knit patterns that you have. I just think that the sweater pumpkins are so stinking cute. You could also add some twine and wrap it around to really define the ridges of the pumpkin, which I think would be absolutely beautiful. But this is how mine turned out, and I'm absolutely loving it. DIY, I'm going to take this fabric that you can get from the Dollar Tree and have some buffalo check, which is perfect for fall, it's perfect for Christmas, it's perfect for everything. I just love it. So I'm just going to start cutting the entire thing into strips. So I just do about 3 squares in between each strip, and I'm just going to cut the entire thing into these strips. And then once that is done, I'm just going to lay a whole bunch of them all on top of each other. I'm going to fold it into thirds, and then I will cut each section out. Now, once I've done that, I am going to take these buffalo check pumpkins that you can get from the Dollar Tree in a pack, I believe, of 5. Now, I did not have like an actual big needle to go through this. It's more of like a big knitting needle, but this still worked. I was able to push my little knitting needle. I can't remember exactly what it's called. Remind me in the comments. I did knitting for a while, and now it's completely... It's gone. It's out of my mind. So basically, I am just stringing my pumpkin through the string. I was able to use a knife and cut a little hole in it as well. And then you'll see that I'll use a skewer stick to make the holes in there as well. So, you know, it's a whole ordeal, but string your pumpkins on there. I'll do 1 pumpkin, and then I'm going to do some wood beads. So I will do a smaller wood bead and then a big bead in the middle, and then the same size smaller bead on the side. And I just keep repeating this process with the buffalo check pumpkin, the 3 beads, buffalo check pumpkin, 3 beads, until I have run out of pumpkins from the pack that I used. Now, I should have done this step before, you know, while I was cutting. I could have just completely skipped this step, but I decided that I wanted my strips to look really messy. I wanted them to look ripped and frayed. So I just took each strip and cut a little slit on either side. And then I'm just going to go through and rip each of those strips on either side so that they are all nice and frayed. Like I said, obviously, if you just rip the strips originally when you were cutting, you could completely skip this step, but I didn't even think about that when I was doing it, so had to go back and do it. Once I have all of my strips cut and frayed, now I'm just going to go on and start tying them onto my twine. And I'll do one in between each thing that's on the twine. So I do one in between each bead, do one in between each pumpkin, and I just go along the entire garland is what this is going to be. And I even took the strips that I ripped off, the really small ones, and put those in there. I wanted to get it as thick as I possibly could. One other thing that I thought that would look really cute is if you had some sort of white material with the buffalo check pumpkins. That would look really cute because the buffalo check pumpkins do get a little lost with all the fabric being the same pattern, but I still think it looks really cute. You could also do the orange buffalo check pumpkins, but I didn't know if that would, you know, I don't know, look weird with orange and black and white. I don't know. Or you could also do the velvet pumpkins that they have at the Dollar Tree. Anything will work. So I just made it as fluffy as I could, and then I'm going to make 2 tassels for each side. So I just take some twine, wrap it around my hand about 25 times, take the excess twine that is on the end of the garland, and then you're going to take some more twine and wrap it around towards the top of your tassel, and just wrap and wrap and wrap tie a double knot. You'll cut off the loops at the bottom, and you'll just do that for both sides. You'll have 2 really cute tassels on your garland, and I think this one is so much fun. Place it on a shelf with your other decor. You could even hang it as a little kind of banner or out of some baskets on your tier tray. There are so many different possibilities, but I just think this one is so much fun. I'm going to start out with this wooden sign that I actually picked up from Goodwill, but I'm pretty sure that it came from Joann's. I paid maybe $3 for a pack of 3 of these, so this cost me $1. And then I'm just going to stain the entire thing with my Waverly Wax and Antique. I didn't stain the inside back portion just because that is going to be covered up with paper anyways, so that wasn't a big deal. But I did just use a baby wipe to remove any excess of the wax and give it that stained look. I also took some wood letters that I had and got enough to spell out the word harvest, and then I just stained those as well. So in design space, I am going to do a couple of things. First, I'm going to grab some squares and I'm going to size them to the size of the inside of my sign. So I'm going to take 2 rectangles, actually, is what they're going to be. And I made the first one, the biggest one, is the actual size of the inside of my frame. And then the middle one is what I am also going to use to cut out as kind of like a secondary frame piece. You'll see it all come together in just a minute, but I'm going to get the words Hello Harvest in there. I'm not going to cut out the word harvest just because I already have those. I'm going to find some cute pumpkins, and then I'm just going to start sizing everything. And doing this is going to allow me to size everything to what it needs to be. Once everything is sized to the correct size, I'm just going to go through and change the colors of all of my layers so that they will all cut out individually, because all 4 of these pieces will be different. Today I'm going to be using the CRICUT maker, and I'm really excited because I got fun projects for you guys, not only vinyl but other material as well that the CRICUT maker can cut. So I'm going to start off by cutting out my pumpkins first, just using some orange vinyl from CRICUT, and then I'll move on to my words, which I chose a darker blue for. And then I'm gonna take some scrapbook paper that I got in a pack from Michael's, and I'm gonna put that in my CRICUT. You want to make sure that you're choosing the right settings when you're cutting different materials, so don't forget to go back and change the material settings. So I'm just gonna cut out my cardstock for both the back layer and the top layer, which is just going to be white. And I just do all of my cardstock and vinyl on the blue mat. That's just what works for me. Then I'm going to go through and weed out my vinyl decals, and then I'm going to take my cardstock and I'm just going to use a glue stick to attach these together. Just put some on the back of the white cardstock and apply it to my plaid cardstock, which I think the colors on this is super pretty. And then I'm just gonna again use some more glue stick to apply the cardstock to the inside of this sign. And then I'm just gonna use some CRICUT tools to help me get my paper nice and stuck down to the sign. Once that is all done, I am going to take my wooden letters and I'm going to start attaching it to my sign. Now, I started off using some super glue and that just didn't really work out. It kept having glue seeping from under it, and I didn't want you to be able to see that on the paper. So in the end, I just went with the glue stick, and that actually worked really well. You could probably find a much stronger glue that isn't going to seep through, but this is what I had on hand. This is what worked for me, and I just glued down all of my letters. After those are done, I am going to put my hello word on there, just using the CRICUT transfer tape. and applying that to my sign. Once that's applied, I'll apply my pumpkins, and that'll be it for this DIY. This one is my absolute favorite. I'm loving the plaid and the colors, and the, you got your wooden words and then you got your vinyl. I just think it's really fun. So this is how this one turned out. For this DIY, I'm going to grab one of these chalkboard stands that you can get from the Dollar Tree. I'm going to start by staining the wood around the chalkboard and the stand itself. Again, just using a water-based stain with a brush, and then you can wipe away the stain that gets on the chalkboard really easily. And then I'm going to paint the chalkboard itself with some folk art chalk paint in sage, and I did give that about 2 good coats. And then I found these Hello Fall wood words from Hobby Lobby. They were only a couple of dollars for a pack, and I'm just going to paint the entire thing with some Waverly chalk paint in white. I'm going to grab some twine, and I just wrapped it around the bottom a couple of times and tied a knot in the back. Another awesome thing about this is this could be double-sided if you wanted to make the other side say something else. I'm going to hot glue my words down to the middle of the sign, and then I'm going to grab some of these pumpkins that I got in a pack from Hobby Lobby. They had orange and white, and I'm just going to kind of mess around with some of those pumpkins. I take some florals from the Dollar Tree and cut them down, and then I'm just going to start hot gluing them in place on the bottom. And I just really just kind of messed around with the placement of everything, found out where I liked them, and hot glued them down. So I took those pumpkins and some florals from the Dollar Tree, some of those pine cones, and I just hot glued them all down. Now this next DIY was inspired by a post that I saw on Pinterest. I'll link that original post in my description box, but they just used some hot glue on some pumpkins to create some sweater details, sweater patterns, and this was my attempt at doing it. It didn't turn out exactly like how I imagined that it would, but I wanted to keep this in here to give you guys, that inspiration to try it yourself, and hopefully yours will turn out much better than mine did. But I just thought that this was still too fun not to share. So I'm just going to go through and add some sweater patterns onto my pumpkin with just a pencil, any kind of knitting pattern that you think would look cute. Just add that to your pumpkin. I got these pumpkins from the Dollar Tree, and I like the pumpkins with the bigger, thicker ridges. It's easier to do this versus ones that have a lot of tiny ridges. And then once I have everything drawn on there, I just take a detailed hot glue gun. This one is by Surebonder. I made sure not to use my bigger hot glue gun that has a lot of glue come out all at once. The detailed ones is definitely the way to go for this kind of project. And I just went over all of my lines that I just drew on there. And then for this pattern right here, I just wanted it to look like a bunch of little dots. So I would just squeeze out a little bit and then drag it down and squeeze out and drag it down just so that they looked like dots versus just, you know, one line of hot glue. And then in between each of the ridges, I also went through and added dots as well. Just by doing the exact same thing, just squeezing out a little bit of hot glue and then dragging it down, squeezing out a little bit, dragging it down. Same process, pretty easy. So this is what your pumpkin is going to look like when you've got your hot glue all added to it. I also did this on another flat pumpkin from the Dollar Tree, and then I took them outside and spray painted them in the Heirloom White by Rust-Oleum and then this Pale Sage by Krylon. So here they are after about 2 coats. I am going to paint the stems in an apple barrel, just kind of, you know, a neutral gray brown. I cannot remember the name of the paint, but any color will do. I just painted each of the stems this color, gave it about 2 coats, and that's it for this one. Still think it turned out pretty cool, even though if it wasn't exactly how I imagined it, but I still think they're cute. DIY, I'm gonna make your classic fake caramel apples. This one was really fun. So I'm just gonna take some Mod Podge. I did use an entire 2-ounce bottle, and then I took that classic caramel apple barrel paint and I just kept mixing it together until I got the color that I wanted. And then I had these apples that I had picked up from Amazon. Now you could use any apples that you want. These ones came in a pack with some mini apples that I had purchased for another project, so I decided to just use what I had. I took some dowels from the Dollar Tree and cut those down as my sticks to go in the apples, and then I just hot glued them down inside the middle. Now I'm just going to take my apples and roll them around in the Mod Podge and paint mixture. I don't know what was wrong with these apples, but the red dye that was used on them kept seeping through and bleeding through the Mod Podge and paint. So in the end, I did have to just take the paint and paint over it to cover that up. I have no idea why this happened, but you know, it did. So to make the fake peanut look, I'm going to take these steel cut oats. I feel like these really do look like chopped up peanuts, so I thought this was perfect. And before the paint was in Mod Podge was totally dry, I just dipped my apple in there, got it all nice and coated, and I did that for all 3 apples. You could always add a bow or raffia or anything else that you wanted to the apples, but I thought they were cute as is. You're going to take one of these piggy banks from the Dollar Tree. I used a razor blade to scrape off the words from the glass. Once that was all cleaned off, I'm just going to take my mineral chalk paint from Waverly and I'm going to paint the frame and give it 2 coats. I'll also use a detail brush to get right up next to the glass so that that is all nice and painted, because the glass in this was hot glued down and I was too afraid to try to take it out. I didn't want it to end up breaking, so I just took a detailed brush and got right up close to that glass. I'm going to head over to my Cricut design space. I am going to type in fall, and they had so many fun fall designs. I found this Welcome Fall and I just made it all black because I want it to all be the same vinyl. I'm going to size it to the size that I want, attach it all together, and then I'm going to make sure that I have the correct material selected. I'm going to do a foil, which is super fun and really pretty. So once I've got my material selected, I'm going to cut that out, and here it is. I thought that this was so much fun. This is just a Cricut adhesive foil that is just gorgeous and I thought would look really, really pretty with this piece. So I'm just going to go through and weed it all out. It is a little bit more difficult than your typical vinyl to weed just because it is a lot thicker. But I thought that this just turned out really, really pretty. So after I've got my vinyl all weeded, I'm going to take some more of this cardstock. And I found this really pretty stripe pattern and the colors on it was just gorgeous. So I just traced it to the size of the back of the piggy bank and I'm going to cut that out. I'm going to use a glue stick to attach it to the back of the piggy bank and put that down on there. And then I'm going to transfer my foil decal over to the top of the glass of the piggy bank. I just centered it as best as I could and scraped it on there and removed the transfer tape. And look how beautiful this is. I just think it's absolutely gorgeous and was super, super easy to do. I didn't have to do any designing. It was an already designed image, so this really took me only a couple of minutes. And then I filled the inside with 2 packs of these mini pine cones and mini pumpkins from the Dollar Tree, put the back on, and that is it for this DIY. I think this looks so cute. I love the foil decal on the front. I am so excited to display this one in my home. One, I saw this round fall sign. I absolutely love the signs with all the fall things on it. You know, for example, this one, apple cider, hay rides, pumpkins, bonfires, leaves. I just thought that this one was so cute. And I decided to throw a little design together. So I'm just going to speed through this process of how I made it. Honestly, it's really, really easy. You're just going to type out your words, find the fonts that you want to use. There is a little curve button so you can curve your words, and one trick that I use is to take a circle the size of the circle that I'm going to be using. So for example, for this project, the piece that I'm using is an 8-inch round circle. So I will make a circle in CRICUT Design Space, make it 8 inches, and then I can size everything to that circle so that it'll be all nice and perfect when I cut it out. So I just go through and type in all the words that I want to be in there, and then I'll change the fonts and sizing and just kind of lay everything out. Now again, with the cursive, you want to make sure that you're welding that together so that when it cuts out, it's cutting out all in one piece instead of each individual letter. And then I just attach everything so it all stays in place when I'm cutting it out. And then I'll move on over to painting my sign. So this is something that I just got from the Dollar Tree, this little family wood round. And I believe it's just like an MDF material. It's not actual wood, but I just took my heat gun to heat up the stickiness from that tag so that I could take that off. And then I'm just going to give this a rough coat of paint, probably about, one, maybe 1.5 coats of this Dixie Belle paint and fluff. And then I'll take the brush that I used for my previous project that had the gray paint on it, and I just used the remaining paint that was on the brush just to dry brush over the circle. And then I'm just going to go through and weed my project. It's a little hard to see because it's white vinyl on a white carrier sheet, so you can't see it too well, but I'm going to use the vinyl as a stencil. So instead of weeding it like you normally would with taking out all the negative spaces, you're going to take out all the words. So everywhere where you would want paint to go, you are going to remove. So I'm going to remove all the letters, but I'm going to be keeping in all the little pieces, like for the A's and the O's and the P's, all the little middle pieces I'm going to leave there. Just what you're going to do. And one trick that I do with this, when I'm applying my transfer tape and then trying to remove that back carrier sheet, sometimes it can be a little bit hard to remove. So I like to kind of roll my carrier sheet back, and that helps me not lose so many pieces and keeps everything nice and down. I can just push over the pieces that are lifting up a little bit and it will stick back down. Now I'm just going to lay that on my sign and then rub it on using the burnishing tool, and then I will just remove the transfer tape and start stenciling. So I'm just going to use some Dixie Belle paint just in black, and then this orangey red one. I believe it's called Rust Red or something along those lines. I can't remember, but it's one of my favorite colors for fall because I just love the rusty orangey red tones. I just think it's really, really fun. So I just went around with my black paint with an up and down dabbing motion and stenciling through the words. And then for the word fall, I used the orangey reddish rusty color. And I just did one rough coat of all of this. I didn't worry about making it too perfect. And before it dries, you want to make sure that you remove your vinyl. So I'm just immediately going through and removing the vinyl. And whatever I can't pull off just with my hands, I'll go back through using my weeding tool and weed out the remaining vinyl. And when I did pull this up, it did peel off some of the paint, mostly from the spot where the tag was on the sign, where it had some of that sticky residue that I couldn't get off, but it wasn't too big of a deal because I just went back through with some white paint on a paintbrush and touched it up, and you never could have tell that the paint had peeled up to begin with. And that's it for this project. You could add the leaves on like the inspiration photo, but I decided to just leave it like this, and I think it's so cute. I'm going to take this big piece of wood that we had left in our garage. My husband cut it down to size for me, and I'm going to start by painting the entire thing white. I did not do, the best job painting. I wanted it to look really rustic and weathered, so I just did one coat on this. Now, I did do this sign twice. I struggled with this one. So just know, if you're struggling with the project, everybody struggles. It happens to me a lot. I feel like this video in particular, I was having so many issues with all of my DIYs. So just keep that in mind. We're not all perfect. You can't get it done right all the first time, every time. So I drew 2 lines down the side and I ended up not liking it. So that was one thing that I wasn't a fan of. And then I took my CRICUT transfer. I thought this was so cute and absolutely perfect for this video for fall festival. It was just absolutely perfect. So it comes in 3 different pieces. You can cut all 3 pieces out to make it a whole lot easier to use. And I'm just going to fuzz the back of it really, really well on all 3 pieces. So you want to make sure that it's not going to be too sticky on your piece. Now, what I did wrong here was that I did not let the paint on my sign completely dry. It felt dry to the touch, but obviously the layers underneath it were not dry. And that completely messed up this sign. And then as well, I don't know what I did wrong, but after I put my chalk paste on there, it just wasn't seeping through the transfer enough. I don't know if I didn't put enough chalk paste on there or what was going on, or if it had to do with the fact that my paint wasn't all the way dry. Anyways, it didn't turn out the way that I had hoped it would the first time around. Don't know what was wrong, but like I said, it happens. It happens to all of us. So just going to show you how the process works here is you're just going to take your chalk paste and your squeegee tool, and you're just going to go through and put all of your chalk paste on the pieces where you want. I used an assortment of colors, some black and gray and green and orange, and this really pretty tealy green color that I thought was really fun. So you're just going to do all of that, and then you're going to remove your transfers. So you can see here, it didn't fully go through. Like I said, I'm not sure what happened. So I decided to completely start over. I sanded everything down. I washed my transfers. I did it again, and the second time it turned out much, much better. So one, I took my CRICUT and I cut out this piece here, this yellow buffalo check piece that you can see. I just cut out a rectangle to the size of a picture frame, and then I cut out a leaf in the middle. So I'm going to take the glass that came in the picture frame that I'm using, and I'm just going to line it up onto my sweater. Now I want to make sure that where I'm cutting is going to line up with where my leaf is, because the sweater is going to peek through the cardstock, which I think is really cute. And that cardstock also came from a pack that I got from Michael's. So I'm just going to trace around the glass on my sweater, and I'm just going to cut around where I marked. You don't have to be super precise because you're not going to see all of it. You're just going to see the section where that leaf is. So I'm going to take this frame that I got from Goodwill. I got it for $2.49, and I just thought that this was really pretty and would work really great for fall. I'm just going to insert my glass, insert my cardstock, and then put my sweater in the back, and then just close everything on up. And I just think this is so cute. I love the way it looks. I was feeling like it was missing a little bit of something though, so I took some of my SOLAWOODFLOWERS and I just hot glued those to the side. I haven't used these in a project in a really long time, and I just thought that this would work perfect for this. So I will have Sola flowers linked down below if you ever want to check them out. They are some of my favorite flowers to craft with. I think that they just made the perfect finishing touch, and here's how my sweater leaf picture turned out. This one, I'm going to take one of these houses that you can get from the Dollar Tree. I tried to pop the back off of this and it just would not come off. So I'm going to take the scrapbook paper from Hobby Lobby, and I'm going to start by tracing out the scrapbook paper for the back. And I'll have to go through and kind of, you know, finesse the scrapbook paper to fit the inside of my house. It didn't work completely, but you know, I was trying and I did the best that I could. And to kind of cover up the spots that you could still kind of see through that scrapbook paper, I just took some Mod Podge and some white paint and put that around the side so that you couldn't see all those colorful spots all over the back. So I just Mod Podged my scrap paper down to my sign, and I'm going to take one of these pumpkins that you can get from the Dollar Tree or that I got last year, and I'm just going to cut this in half. And then I'm going to take some fall filler from Hobby Lobby, these small orange pumpkins that I've been using. I'm also going to take that and cut one of those in half. I'm going to start by painting my large pumpkin with my white Waverly chalk paint, and I just gave that a good couple of coats. I took some wire that I could use for the stems of my orange pumpkins, and I'm just painting those brown, and then I'll just reuse the same stem that came with the white pumpkin. I have this word that says blessed that I got from a pack from Hobby Lobby. I'm just going to put that right at the top of my little house. I'll start hot gluing my pumpkins down. The white one's going to go in the middle, and then the two orange ones on the side. And then I just curled the wire a little bit and stuck those right down into those orange pumpkins. And then, like I said, I just stuck the original stem that came with the white pumpkin back in there. I'm going to take my Waverly Wax and Antique, and I'm just going to start distressing everything, going over the sides and the corners, give it more of a rustic look to it. And I also distressed the pumpkins as well, made it so that you could actually see the detail of the curves of each pumpkin. And then I'm going to cut up some florals that I got from the Dollar Tree, and I'm just going to start hot gluing them in the corners and in that top corner as well. And then I also took some sunflowers that I got from the Dollar Tree and hot glued those to the two corners on the bottom. And then hot glued my florals to the top, where I also made a little bow with some twine, and I just hot glued that to the top, and this is how this one turned out. This one, I'm going to take out my CRICUT. You guys, I absolutely love the pumpkin transfers that came on this one. You get so many different kind of patterns, and I just think that these are all so much fun. So I grabbed these wooden houses that I got from a pack at Target Dollar Spot for $5. You got 3 of them, and they were a couple different sizes. And then I grabbed this transfer from CRICUT that has all the different kind of fall things in it. I don't know what it is about montages of like fall stuff. I think that they are so much fun. And so I just kind of aligned my transfer with my block and kind of found which words I wanted on it. And then I took several different of the chalk pastes and just went to town and used my little detailed squeegee tool to apply this. Now, I know that some of my subscribers have commented about how expensive CRICUT is. It can definitely be expensive to start up. One thing that I would suggest if you're wanting to try it, but maybe you don't have the money to invest in it right now, is to try the CRICUT Club. It's like a monthly subscription box, and they send you a transfer and the paste packets so that you have the paint and the transfer, and it's only $20 a month. So I think that's a great way to try it out if you're wanting to see what it's all about. Give it a try, see if you like it without investing so much money into it right away. So I'll have CRICUT linked to my description box. I am a designer with them, and I personally really, really love them. If you can hear my child screaming in the background, I apologize. He's going crazy at the moment. Anyways, if you want to check out CRICUT, I'll leave it in my description box, and I think it's really fun. I think it's really relaxing. Chris and Kate got me hooked on it, and the fall stuff I'm just dying for. So you peel your transfer off, you wash it so that you can use it again, and look how stinking cute this turned out. I'm going to take a stretch canvas. I removed the canvas portion of it just so that I had the wood frame. And I'm going to take my Waverly chalk paint in plaster and just gave it one coat because I did want to have it still look a little bit rustic and, you know, not totally perfect and covered in paint. Once I do that, I'm going to take some jumbo popsicle sticks from Walmart. I used my Craft Smart stain in brown, and I stained all of these popsicle sticks in that color. I also cut them down so that they would fit the back portion of my frame. I also took this pumpkin wood ornament in that same apple barrel yellow paint. It is in Golden Sunset. Like I said, this is one of my absolute favorites. And then I just added some detail and grooves to my pumpkin using my Waverly chalk paint and truffle. And then I also use that to paint the stem on top. And now what I'm going to do is take those popsicle sticks and I'm just going to start hot gluing them to the back of my frame. I wanted that shiplap look to it, and so the popsicle sticks worked out perfectly, and I just hot glued those all the way down my entire frame. I'm going to take some of this berry garland that I got from Hobby Lobby. I love this color and I thought this would be so cute. So I just started to make a wreath with this, and I just started wrapping it around itself several times, cutting off the excess berries and then wrapping it around the bottom to hold it all in place. I'm going to hot glue my pumpkin down to the middle of my sign, and then I'll hot glue my berry wreath down around my pumpkin. And then I'm going to take some of this gray and white buffalo check ribbon. I'm just going to tie a simple shoelace bow with it. And I'm also going to use that to cover up the hole at the top of the pumpkin where the stem is. And I'll just dovetail the ends, and that's it for this DIY. This is still one of my favorites that I have kept since I made it last year. I plan on putting it up again this year. I just think it's so much fun. It was super easy to do, and I love how farmhouse it is. It's just one of my favorites. First one, I grabbed this thankful sign from the Dollar Tree. They had a whole bunch, thankful, grateful, all sorts of different words. I just started by popping off the back. It is pretty easy to do, and then I just removed as much of that paper from the backing as I possibly could. I grabbed some scrapbook paper that I had in a paper pack from Michael's. I just thought this pattern was super pretty, so I'm going to take that. I'm going to take the backing of my sign, trace around it, and then I will cut that paper out. Once that's cut out, I'm just going to take a glue stick and glue stick my paper right to the back. Pretty simple and easy as that. And then I'm going to take my absolute favorite Dixie Belle paint, Vintage Duck Egg. You guys, I have been loving this color for fall. If you haven't seen my previous videos, I've just been really obsessed with this. I always have Dixie Belle linked in my description box, so if you guys are ever interested, you can check it out. It is a little bit more on the pricey side, but I only have to do one coat with this, so you're definitely using a lot less. The coverage is amazing. I have just been obsessed recently, so I'll have that link down below. And then all I'm going to do is use some super glue to attach the front back to the back and let that set up and dry. And then I wanted to add a cute little hanger for this, so I just grabbed some twine and some beads that I pick up from Amazon. I always have those linked down below as well, so that you can find them just at an affordable price. I know they have a string of beads at the Dollar Tree if you can find them. If you can't, these are a great option as well. So I just string on as many beads as I want, and then I'll just tie a double knot on both ends of my twine and hot glue that to the back of my sign, just making a little hanger for it. And then to cover up and add a little bit more stability, I'm just going to add some ribbon with some hot glue right on top of those twine knots at the bottom. And that's it for this DIY. This is so gorgeous, and I feel like this is a piece that you could find at Hobby Lobby. I just think it's really fun. I'm going to take this little jar that I got from the Dollar Tree and this little plate. It says odds and ends, you know, where you just put your random little trinkets. And I'm going to take that and paint it with the mineral chalk paint from Waverly. So you will have to go over this several times to get full coverage on it. It is that kind of like glossy glass, so you have to wait until it's completely dry to add another coat. And I think I had to do about 3 or 4 coats, so the heat gun definitely comes in handy when you don't want to wait for paint to dry. So I'll have that linked down in the description box below if you want to check it out. It has seriously been such a lifesaver, so I am not waiting forever for paint to dry. Chalk paint already dries pretty fast, but when you're doing so many layers of it, it really comes in handy. So I just did several coats on this, and then I am going to seal it with some Mod Podge or just sealer a little bit later. And I did take my sandpaper and I just went around the edges of the plate just to give it a little, you know, extra something, a little bit more dimension. And then I'm going to take those same pine cones and pumpkins that I used in the previous project, and I'm just going to fill this jar up. So I wanted it to be kind of like a, not necessarily potpourri, but, you know, a little filler. I can't think of the word of what it's called right now, but just to fill the jar. And then I added some twine around the top, and then I'm going to tie a little bow. And the nice thing is that I'm not going to hot glue the plate down, so that I can change this out per season whenever I want. Maybe in Christmas time I'll add some, you know, Christmas lights or something to that effect so that I can, you know, have a little interchangeable piece. So after I've tied the bow, I'm just gonna set the plate right on top, and then you can put whatever you want on top of this. I chose a couple of pumpkins, but really, like, the possibilities are endless. You can do absolutely whatever, put whatever you want on top, and I think it makes for a super affordable and really cute piece. That's it for today's video. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to subscribe before you leave. Give this video a big thumbs up if you enjoyed it. And that's it. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye.